Bedside teaching is one of my favourite things of a day in the woods. So it's when a doctor gets like 3 or 4 medical students, we go around, well, the bedside of the patient, we speak to them, we examine them, we come up with their care plan, and we learn more about the condition. So that is a really useful way at figuring out what you know and what you don't know, and also the practicalities of like what a condition would really be like. So marrying up what you read in textbooks with what you're actually seeing, and structuring how you would think about a certain patient and their care.
I enjoy the bedside teaching with doctors because it helps me to enhance my learning about certain conditions, and it's more helpful to come face to face with the patients and learn about their condition than just learning it from a textbook.
It's really high quality teaching, and it really beats learning from books. Doing things or observing things yourself is very memorable for me, and I much prefer it.
So bedside teaching can be hit and miss, and that just depends on what the doctor is like that's teaching you, how many people you've got in your group, all these things. It can be, like for myself, it was quite challenging just because I didn't know that many doctors. You know, I didn't feel like maybe I was similar to them in some ways, so it was kind of difficult to relate. But the best thing you can do is show up, be as nice as possible, and just throw yourself into it. That you'll be surprised at the little things you can learn just by looking at like what the patient has on their desk next to them, reading what's written on their whiteboard behind them, just all these little things that maybe if your teaching isn't as good, then you can just pick up on the little things just about being in a hospital, because a lot of people haven't spent that much time in hospital. So even just being there in the wards it can be quite beneficial.
So when you go into medical school, depending on what medical school you go to, you might get this at different points. We have had some bedside teaching, but obviously this has been cut short because of the current pandemic. But the experience I've had, it really depends on what doctor you get who teaches you. Some of them are really excellent and they kind of know what level you're at. The other ones don't really know what kind of level you're at and what you know and you don't know. But regardless, it really reminds you why you're learning all the things that you learn in lectures. Sometimes when you're in a lecture, you don't really know like, why am I learning this, or how does this apply? And even having the placements kind of like in between all your lecture work, it just really reminds you why you're doing this, and again it really humbles you and it's quite rewarding, and you do learn much more when you're in a hospital setting. Just like even people skills, communication skills, you really understand the importance of those aspects as a medical student.
So bedside teaching it's very informal, and for better or for worse, not everyone gets the same teaching. I feel like you get out of it what you put into it. If you're really engaged and you kind of know what you're trying to get out of this, if you're going into it looking to get as much from the experience as possible, then you will get a lot from it, because actually the people doing the teaching do care about what they're doing. But if you don't engage with it, then it can be you can lose some of the opportunities from bedside teaching. Because really what you've got the opportunity to learn from someone who's very experienced, kind of one-on-one or 2 or 3-on-1, and you've got a lot of contact time during that, but you do need to be quite engaged with it in order to get everything out of it that you can.
My experience of the bedside teaching has been limited, which hopefully I get a lot more of after exams in February. But in first year, I remember an example of this was going on a GP placement home visit with my tutor for a patient that had an exacerbation of their COPD. And the patient was wheezy and he was very much struggling to get out what he had to say for the history I needed to take. So my GP tutor sort of swept in and she took over the history and was able to, in a really brisk and efficient manner, get everything she needed from him. And it just showed me in that sort of context that bedside teaching can have so many things that you can't learn from a textbook.
For the most part, it's really useful. The doctors will have been round the wards beforehand and picked out the most interesting and best patients for you to see. It lets you see a lot of the conditions that you've learned about in your textbooks and see them in a real life setting. You're able to perform clinical examinations and take histories and get very direct feedback from the patients and from the doctor who's teaching you, which is really useful for when you go on to work in the future and for exams like your OSCE exams.